Okay, welcome to How to Roll a Ball in Unity. So, first off, the very first thing you're going to do, if you are brand new to Unity, or maybe if you're returning, that's perfectly fine, but I think it's going to be responsible for me to kind of show you how to get Unity, not install it. I'm afraid I might leave installing up to you. Maybe I'll do a separate video. But once you do have Unity installed, and very specifically Unity Hub, which is not a Unity version, it is simply a manager that helps us kind of organize where all of our Unity's versions are. And there are quite a lot of Unity versions. We've got some official releases here, we've got some pre-releases, we've got some betas, and some LTSs. I am using the Unity 2020 third quarter 17 version. That's actually not true, I'm using this one up here, but this is the most latest one. You are absolutely welcome to use this one, or you can use mine specifically. So it is the 2020 third quarter second version. LTS, of course. All this stuff down here doesn't really matter too much. The only one you're really going to need is the Universal Windows Platform Build Support. And when you go to like add a version of Unity, like we'll go through it real quick. This screen right here is how you get all of like the Android and the iOS and the Apple and the Windows and the web support. This is where you select all that. You are more than welcome to copy my settings, and you are more than welcome to just check all these boxes, except for this. We don't really need this, but you're more than welcome to check all these. It's not going to make too big of a difference for you, but it will save you some time maybe in the future if you do want to build on a TV operating system. If you want to build a game on a TV operating system or something of that magnitude, or maybe an app even, or Linux even. But typically most people go for iOS, Mac, the Universal Windows, WebGL, and whatever this Windows is. Yeah. And of course we'll be using Visual Studios as our IDE. You are more than welcome to download your own IDE. IDE, not IED. That's a different thing, isn't it? No, you're more than welcome to download your own IDE, which is our developer editor. Do not use Notepad. Please do not use Notepad as your IDE. Please just use Visual Studio or MonoDevelop, or even just an online IDE. Unity will not be able to pipe like your code from there, but you will be able to code there and copy and paste if you would like. So without further ado, once you have your version of Unity installed, whether it's mine or not, we can just kind of go to projects and we can make a new project. I have a lot of grayed out projects, and that's because they're all in the cloud for Unity. Yours is not going to look like this, and these darker ones are the ones that actually have saved on the machine. Not a single one of these is finished except for Rollerball. So to start a new project, we're just going to hit new and go to 3D. We can use the Universal Render Pipeline even if you'd like, but I'm going to use 3D for this tutorial. Universal Render Pipeline is just kind of like the holy grail of templates. It's like the it's going to help you if you want to build like an iOS game. You're not going to have to go through and like do a lot of setting stuff. You're not going to have to mess with a lot of settings to make your game work. This will have it all already ready for you. 2D is of course simply 2D, and 3D is 3D. High definition, well, I'm sure you know what that means. It's high definition. You can choose your file location. I highly suggest you do not put it on your you see this little Windows? That means that is where Windows is stored on your computer. That is your boot drive. So when your computer turns on and it runs, this is the hard drive here that is doing all that work. So if I want to use my start, if I want to do stuff on my desktop, that is the hard drive it's using. So typically we're going to want to use either D, A, or even your backup if you have an external one plugged in. If you only have a C drive, that's fine. It's just going to slow your computer down just a tad bit. And if your computer is slow, it's because of your C drive. That's perfectly okay. So yeah, go ahead and name your project whatever you like. Choose your file location. Mine's, like I said, on my D drive. But instead of me making one as well, I'm just going to use this rollerball that I already have, just to make things a little bit more simple for me. just to make things a tad bit more simple. So right off the bat, I already have the game made. And I know what you're thinking. Oh man, this looks pretty great. Or maybe you're not thinking that at all. Maybe you hate this. And if you do, I don't blame you, because I kind of went onto the Unity store and just grabbed a few assets that I thought would give this thing a little bit of pop. But this is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be designing this little square right here, and we're going to be we're going to try to have a good time, I guess. We're going to try to roll a ball. So this is kind of going to be like our finished project, finished project. Be able to roll around, be able to collect this till it's 1 point. It's a pretty fairly easy and fairly simple stuff. So, like I said, you're not going to have any of this. So to keep things pretty simple, I'm going to go to my scenes and I'm going to make a new scene. Create. You do not have to do this. I need to do this because I need to start from scratch. So I'm going to call this Rollerball 2. Just like that. And now this should look pretty familiar to you guys. It's pretty blank. This is kind of like what we have as a default. You know, anytime you open a Unity as project, this is what we'll have. Yeah, nothing going on here. It's kind of barren, but that's okay. We're gonna try to fill the space. So first things first, I need to show you guys what you need to pay attention to, and just kind of the important stuff, because this can look to new people, this can look pretty scary, but don't fret. It's very simple and very easy. You'll get used to this very quickly. So first things first, we have our hierarchy. This is very important. It's kind of like a list that tells you what all you have in your game. So if we were to right click in this space here, go to 3D object and press on cube, we should make a cube, and that appears on our hierarchy. We can rename it to square for whatever reason, or if you want to name it circle, we could do that too. You can name it whatever you like. I'm going to leave this as cube for now. And if we click on it, we can see over here in the inspector, which is kind of like the autopsy, if you will. It's kind of, well, I mean, it's an inspector, like I don't know how much else to explain it. It is a inspector. We're inspecting the object that we have selected. We can also select in the hierarchy, so we can look at like our directional light, which is right here in front of us, right here. We can see everything about that. We can inspect the main camera. We can inspect this cube once again. You can inspect everything. If it's in your game, you can inspect it. And I believe we can even inspect things here as well. Yeah, in your files, which we'll get into files in a second. Alright. So if you haven't already, in the inspector you have a few different components, right, of the object you have. So when you spawn in this cube, you'll notice that it already has our transform component and our cube mesh component and our mesh render component and the box collider and the default material. It already has all this stuff. You don't have to worry about that. The mesh filter and the mesh renderer we are not going to worry about. What we're going to be working with is the box collider and the default material, as well as the transform. So if you haven't already, go ahead and set your position to this coordinates. It's just 0, 1, 0. 0, or this X is our X-axis, this is our Y-axis, and this is our Z-axis. We can even rotate it if we wanted to, which with a cube it doesn't appear to be doing too much, does it? We can even scale it to make it bigger if we like. Whatever reason we want to do that, we can do that too. But I don't know why I put it all at 0. That doesn't make much sense, does it? Put it back at 1. Yeah, and then we have the box collider. We'll talk about the box collider later, but all you need to know is that if we didn't have this, things wouldn't run into our cube here. They would just pass right through. Kind of like a bug in a video game, or hackers even, when they go through the wall, they abuse the box collider. They just go through. They act like it's not even there. So without the box collider, we wouldn't be able to run into things, which is pretty important in games. Right, so real quick, we're gonna forget about all this for now. We're gonna focus on our asset folder. You're not gonna have all these files, and that is perfectly okay. We're gonna mix them. So like for instance, the first one we can make, we right click in this space down here in assets, we can do a new folder, and we can name this whatever we want. Like we can name sign or prefabs or scripts, you know, we can name it that as well. I don't need any new folders, so I'm going to delete mine. I highly suggest that you make these folders. Materials, you need a materials folder, you need a prefabs folder, you need a scenes folder, a scripts folder, and a sprites folder. You might not need this one, but it's good to have. Once you have all of these, let's take a... I was going to say let's take a look inside, but maybe let's not do that. Let's instead just kind of talk about why we even need these folders. They are what they are. They're folders. They help us store and organize. And organizing in Unity and in programming is so incredibly important. It just anything you're doing with a computer, it needs to be organized. I promise you, you will not regret organizing. It makes things so much better. Makes them easier to find. And yeah, so before we continue on with actual game stuff, I do need to show you two more things. The first one is the game window. We have our scene window up here, and we have our game window. The scene window is kind of what we can look at to edit things, and the game window is what we see if we were a player, or more accurately, what our main camera sees. So, if we look at our main camera, which is right here, it's this thing here, we can see that it is looking at the cube just like that, just at the side of it, the same way it is in the game. And of course we can't select anything in the game. So whatever our main camera is looking at, like if we move it up, we can also look down here, that's also our game view. We move it up quite a bit, we look in the game, and it's also moved up. I'm going to leave it here for now. So that's pretty important. The second thing that's very important is this console tab. We click this, we can see the 1 point from the earlier thing that I was doing. Yours is going to be empty, and that's okay, but we'll be needing the console later. It's really good because Unity uses it to yell at us. If we have any errors, if we make any mistakes, Unity will let us know through the console. Right? So I think there's one more thing I'd like to show you, and that is two more, and that is the tools up here. So I mentioned earlier how we use the transform to move the cube where we wanted it, and to scale it and do all and rotate it. Well, there's another way to do that. If we go up here to the left, we see we have a few tools, such as the move tool. I have that selected right now, and we can move the square on just about any axis. Axis. We can move it on any axis, right? But of course, we want it to be at 0, 0 just for simplicity. I like to keep things at 0, 0, or 0, 1, 0 anyways, because it keeps it nice and close to the center, and if we need anything, well, we know it's at 0, 0, right? It's very good, in my opinion, for practice. You know, if you are sitting down just to practice using Unity, if you want to look at people's tutorials, I highly recommend doing that around position 0, 1, 0. Furthermore, we also have the rotate tool, like so. I don't like using this. I don't think I use this at all unless I'm messing with the camera. I highly recommend you just manipulate the values. We can see over there on the left that it's changing as I rotate this. But we can just do Control Z to reset that. Next up, we got the scale tool, and whatever we drag here will move. Right? We can make our square bigger and longer, wider. We also have the rect tool, which is practically just another scale tool, tad bit different. And we also have this one, which is all of them. It's pretty disgusting, don't use it. And whatever, the box collider. We can edit the box collider, which we'll get into a little bit later. Right now, I highly suggest you just use the move tool, the rotate tool, and the scale tool. It's just the best ones. And furthermore, if you don't want to use any of those tools, you can of course just use the transform box. If the transform box is not working for you, then just make sure you have whatever you're trying to transform selected. you can just kind of drag and you can click on it. You can also do that. You get the idea. It's not too terribly complicated of a subject. But yeah, so far we've talked about, well, before I kind of summarize what we've done, I'd like to show you this layout tab up in the upper right. Using the layout tab, we can kind of change the way Unity looks. So if I didn't want the scene to be here, I could maybe put it over here to the left, and then we have the game there. Maybe I want it down there, or over here. Right? We can change the way Unity looks. Of course, it's probably just a good idea to leave it alone. And of course, I could drag all these and move them and decide where they go. If you don't want to kind of create your own, that's okay. You can choose like the 2x3, which is what I typically work in. You can choose the 4 split, which is pretty terrible in my opinion. The default, which is what you should be using right now. The tall, and the wide. And of course, you can save all the layouts. I'm going to keep it in default for simplicity's sake, if you don't want to change it. And with that being said, let's recap. I've talked about the tools. Let's make sure this is down. I've talked about your hierarchy, your inspector. I've talked about how to spawn objects. We can also create, you know, a sphere, a capsule, cylinder, a plane, a quad. Just drag them in. I've talked about organization. I've talked about the console and game tab. I've talked about your layout. With that being said, that's actually just the basics of Unity. That's it. That's all there is to it. With these tools and these basic functions, you could practically create a game, or roll a ball, which is what we'll be doing today. So, without further ado, and I know this is taking a good second to get started, let's begin, shall we? So, we have a cube. If you want, you can delete your old one and make a new one for whatever reason. I don't know why I keep spawning over there. Just bring it back to 0, 0, 0. Alright, let's spawn it in, and let's make it a little bit bigger. The first thing we need to do is we need to make like our arena for rolling the ball, like we had in the other scene with the soccer ball and the beautiful blue, cloudy sky. We need to make an arena, so that way the player doesn't fall out and he doesn't get lost. So we're going to do, I'm thinking 20 by 1 by 20. And of course you can always just use the scale tool or the rec tool to do this as well, but I'm telling you, this is just so much easier. You can use decimals if you like, 0.5, or odd numbers or even numbers, but I'm going to use this because I just think it's better. Alright, so we have our ground, and once again, organization guys, we're going to want to rename this to ground. You can click F2 on your keyboard, or you can just right click and rename to ground. We're renaming that square we just made into a platform, ground. Right? And this is just so that when we are trying to apply stuff to this ground, that we know it's the ground and not the wall. Because every time we spawn in a new cube, like so, it's going to get renamed to cube 1. So we're going to kind of need everything to be pretty organized. So let's go to this cube that we just spawned in. I only have 2 cubes in the scene. This one's not where it's supposed to be. Don't know why it's doing that. Set this to 1, 2. No, not 12. Please just 2. Okay. And then let's move it to like negative 9.5. Alright. Where's the camera? There's the camera. It's facing that way. So this is going to be the west wall. Let's also make it long. Whoops, that's the wrong long, isn't it? Can I do things? There we go. Make that 1. Alright, if we do that, yeah, it looks pretty good. It's pretty flush. So, like I said, the camera's facing that way. I'm going to name this west wall. You don't have to name it that. You can name it wall 1 if you want to. But, for the sake of me knowing what is going on, I'm going to name it west wall. Now, instead of like spawning another cube, we can actually just do, and doing all of this that we just did, we can actually just do Control D and duplicate it. Control D and duplicate it. We can see over here that it's duplicating. Right? Let's drag this over here. And let's get that precise, 9.5. And just like that, we have another side of the wall. And of course, this will be my east wall. Just like that. Pretty easy. Look at that, we already have most of the arena done. And what? Most of this tutorial so far has been me explaining how Unity works. I didn't even get into anything too crazy. We're going to do this again, Control D. Oh, we got another one. And we're going to actually rotate this, well, that's not what we want, 90 degrees. 9.5. Oh, how's that look? Ah, it looks absolutely phenomenal. Look at that. Alright, 9.5, 90 degrees, scale is correct, and this will be, whoops, north wall. That will be our north wall. And just like we did before, we're going to do Control D and move it all the way down here with negative 9.5. Beautiful. And this will be south wall. And just like that, we've got an arena, guys. Pretty easy so far, right? Pretty simple. But, you know, the problem is, this is kind of hard to see. Let's also move our camera up a tad bit, shall we? What did I just move? I moved the wrong axis. There we go. I'm also going to tilt the camera 45 degrees. That's the wrong 45. 45. There we go. Now if we go into the game view, we can kind of see what's going on. But, you know, like I was saying, this looks kind of terrible. We can barely see the difference between the floor and the wall. So we need to fix that. The best way to do that is by going into that materials folder I had you make and making a material. Now I already have a few, but that's okay. I'm going to teach you how to make a new one. We're going to go to create, and we're going to go down to about the middle, right under audio mixer, right here, material. We're going to make a new one, and we're going to call this floor, or maybe ground. I'm going to call one floor, just to show you guys how to make one. So we're going to call it floor, and you should have like a little white ball in your material folder. And remember, you just right click in the space of the folder. And then we can go over here to the little color box next to albedo, and we can choose whatever color we like. Typically ground is green, right? Yeah, looks like a pretty okay green. Oh, I take it back, it's not good at all. Okay, nope, don't like it. Yeah, it's still pretty hard to look at. How about that? Okay, that's not much better, but it is better. So all I did was click on albedo, or next to albedo, this little color box. I chose my color, and you can make it whatever you want. I'm making mine green. And that changed our little white ball to a little green ball. And of course, you could just drag this in. Maybe if you want green walls, you could do green walls. You can also drag it in here if you want, like west wall, just like that. I'm going to make my walls a different color though. Another thing we could do to make it, you know, not a solid green, we can go to this little dot here, or if you want, you just click the, no, you gotta click the dot. And you can kind of look at this list. Now, I know what you're thinking, you don't have this. I know. You have this down here. You have this stuff. Like UI sprite, knob, UI mask, stuff like that. That's okay. I'm going to use that stuff as well. So if I click like knob, well, that kind of looks like an arena. So that looks a lot better, actually. Yeah, it's not too bad. I like it. So once you have that, or maybe don't have that, you don't have to add this. This is purely for customization purposes. Once you have this, we can now do our walls. So the same way I did like before, make a material. Just like that. Call it wall, change your color, and be pleased. I'm going to delete it because I don't need it. You can make as many materials as you like. You can make them all different colors. You can make 1,000 of them if you'd like. I'm just going to keep a few. And I'm going to drag in my wall color. So one more time, I just right click in the material folder, create, material, and then I colored it in the inspector, right here. And of course you can click it and press F2 to rename, or right click it and rename it from here, however you like to do it. Okay, now this is looking like an arena, by the way. This is looking pretty nice, or pretty okay in the least. But we're kind of missing our player, aren't we? So let's right click in the hierarchy, create 3D object, and let's do a sphere. It's once again in the wrong spot. They're supposed to spawn at 0, 0. I don't know why they're not doing that. Alright, we got a sphere, or a ball. And this is the ball that we're going to be rolling, kind of like our player. I've already made a material for the ball, so I'm going to throw that. Ooh, this is a nice red. I'll throw that onto the ball. And yeah, that looks pretty cool, doesn't it? I used a metallic, by the way, for this one. Just UI sprite metallic. So the same way we did albedo and chose the UI sprite, I went to metallic and chose the one from here. So that's how you get that one. Once you've done all of this, that's the end. We've made the game practically. The only thing we have to do left is coding. And I think that's the part everybody dreads, but that's okay. I'm going to do my best to explain it. Alright. Well, I think we've been making good time. So, without further ado, we're going to go to that script folder I had you make. And of course, you don't have any of these, but that's okay. We're going to make 3 scripts today. We're not going to do spawning. We're going to make camera, coin, and movement. So in order to make a script, we're going to do create and C# script, and that will make one. You can name it. You can name it the same as mine if you like, or you can name it your own. Just keep in mind that organization is important, and you need to name it similar to what I'm naming it, I suppose. So for instance, this is our moving script, this is the script for our coin, and this is the script for our camera. That's why it's named like so. So without further ado, once you've made your script, you've probably already been thrown into Visual Studio. So I'm going to double click on this and get into Visual Studio myself. If it doesn't pull up right away for you, like so, it's because you need to log in with your Microsoft account. As far as I know, Visual Studio is free and apparently needing to update. It is free and you should be able to use it without any problem. If it's not, I apologize. You're more than welcome to use Modern Develop, or if you're insane, you're more than welcome to use Notepad. Assuming Notepad works. I haven't tried it, but it probably does. Yeah, so once you've logged in and you've gotten to this page, we can kind of start the coding process. I'm really liking my soda here. Keeping me, not hydrated, but it's keeping me, keeping the throat, you know, in, how do I say, in use? I don't know what I'm saying. It's keeping me going. So first things first, what you're going to notice is that the script that you named in Unity, which is this script, is named movement.cs up here, which is C#. Movement.C#, so what that means. Because we code in the coding language C#. That's what this is, C#. So let's start explaining. Right off the bat, I'm going to assure you that this is not a long program. This is 48 lines, and that is only because I have spaces and I have comments like this. Comments, all this green is not even code. It is literally just comments for me to understand and for you to understand the code better. I'll also be reading these out, so yeah. And I'll tell you how to make comments and how to go about that as well. So in reality, this is probably only a 30 or 20 line program, if I'm being completely honest with you. Maybe not 20, maybe somewhere around 30. But it's definitely not long, and it's definitely not complicated. So without further ado, let's hop right in. Let's start at the top, shall we? So this right here, these are our libraries. You should have this for sure. Um, in fact, if I were to let me make a new script really quickly. You don't have to do this. I'm going to do this so I can kind of show you what you should have. I'm gonna call this test. Let's open this up. You can see it tacked on another thing. I can switch between test. I can switch between movement. But yours more than likely looks like this. This is the default, and as you can see, Unity has its own comments as well. But yeah, this is the default. This is what you will have every single time you make a C# script in Unity. This is what you'll have. You absolutely must have this. You will never, ever in your life not have this in a Unity script. You must have a class, and you must have libraries. If you don't have this, the script has no idea what's going on. So I'm gonna put this back. You can just do Control Z if you've deleted anything. Control Z is your undo function, and it works on like everything. Okay, if you're typing something and accidentally deleted it, you do Control Z and it'll come back instead of using like the undo up here and redo. So yeah, so this is our libraries. I'm not going to explain the libraries. It's a pretty boring topic and I don't feel like explaining it, but I am going to explain the public class. If you've coded before, you know you can make different. Oh, you can also like make things smaller as well. You can you can hide the entire program. If you've done other coding before, you know you can make more classes in one program, but in Unity, people only tend to use one, and then they use other scripts. Once again, there's the name of our script. If you have named your script something different, make sure, like if you didn't name it movement, make sure that this is the same as what you named it in Unity. Like when you made the script here, make sure this matches, because if it doesn't, it will not work at all. Like it just straight up won't work. So just make sure that works. So typically when that breaks, it's because you've copied something from the internet into Unity. That's okay if you did. A lot of people sample code from the internet, especially when it comes to coding. Sampling code from the internet comes to coding. Yeah, makes sense, doesn't it? I only mean to say that a lot of times it'll be like public class, how to, you can't do spaces, how to roll a ball, and you named your script movement, and you don't know why your code isn't working. So just try to keep it the same. Let me Control Z that back, just so we don't have that little yellow bar. I don't have to worry about misspelling this. Come back. Alright, we're good though. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of some of the more simple stuff. Next up, we have our first line of code that we have to write, and that is the public rigid body Rigi. Now, if you've done coding before, you kind of know that this is a variable declaration. So what this little line of code does, it creates a public variable in the inspector that we can manipulate. Public defines the access. Ignore that. Rigid body specifies the component or game object, depending on what we use, and Rigi is just a variable name. So what does that mean? That means I can name Rigi ball, or I can name it house, or I can name it Southern Arkansas University, which is a college I go to. You can name it all of that. But I'm going to name it Rigi because it is short for rigid body, as you can see right here. Yeah, so let me show you what this does. I'm actually going to steal this, and I'm going to throw it in my... Come on, please work. My hand. We're going to throw it into my test real quick. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it for the sake of simplicity. And I'm going to make another one. Let's do like public game object, and we're going to call it cube. We're just going to call it cube. Capitalization doesn't matter. It's up to you if you want to capitalize. You can make it all caps even. But some things that cannot be changed is this right here and this right here. So public must be spelled and capitalized the same way. Game object must be spelled and capitalized the same way. And rigid body must be spelled and capitalized the same way. Rigi and cube can be whatever you like. You can spell it however you want. That also goes for if you want to like spell the I's with ones for some ungodly reason. You can do that too. The only thing you can't do is put numbers at the beginning, and you cannot put special characters in it at all, I don't think. So yeah, without further ado, oh, one more thing actually. Public canvas, I don't know, canvas. I think canvas needs to be capitalized. So what this is kind of 3 examples of how to make a public variable in Unity. Like I said, these are the components that the game is asking for, and like I said, they must be spelled perfectly, otherwise it won't work. So let's go back over to Unity after doing Control S to save while in the script, and let's go back to Unity and kind of see what that has done. So real quick, I'm going to spawn a cube that is we're going to correct the position of once again, because it does not like to be where it's supposed to be. Put it at 4, and we're going to rename it test. We're going to name it test. And we're going to throw the test script on it. So in our script folder, while having selected the test cube, we can drag it over here to the components. We can also drag it here if we want, and we can just drag it onto the scene and put it on the cube. We can put it on, you know, the sphere, on the wall. We can put it on all that kind of stuff. The script can go on just about anything, but we need to put it on our test cube. So as you can see, we have our variable name right here, and we have some things that it is asking for. We can also do public int number. Save that. And if we go back to Unity and look over here at our test script, we can see we can now input a number. Let's call it 10. Why not? And all this stuff right here is just stuff that the game is asking for. So when you write a script, the Unity needs you to kind of point it in the right direction when it comes to calling, not calling, but when it comes to like finding things to manipulate. This will make a lot more sense in the spawning scripts, and I think I have a much better example down the line as well as to how this all works. So kind of don't worry about the test script for now, just know that this kind of works. I can actually show you this though. So with our cube game object, we can click on this little dot and we can see all of the game objects in our hierarchy. We can put whatever we like in this little spot. We can also just kind of drag it in. So if we want ground to be our game object, boom, ground. Yep, that easy. Maybe south wall. Yep, it's in there. Sphere, bam. Whatever we want. We can also change it back to none if we want to. We can't, however, do the same for canvas. We can't do the same for rigid body. And the reason for that is because these game objects is not a canvas and it is not a rigid body. That is not what it is. Okay? They are game objects, and it is asking for a game object specifically. That's why it matters so much that you spell it correctly. And of course, number is just a number. We can change this to whatever value we're crazy enough to put in. Yeah. So let's get back to the actual coding of movement.cs. Ignore test. I'll just kind of explain how public variable works and what kind of can be like your defaults, so that way you can make more of them and understand how they work and what they do. Right? So that is what a public float, or not float, a public variable does. Right? So we also have public float speed equals 10f. So if you don't know what float is the same as int that we did back over here. It is a data type. We can also do public double number. We could do public float number. And we could do public string word. And we could do public character letter. Okay. So if we do that, and we'll look over here at our test script again. If it'll load, please. Oh, it doesn't like me using number twice. That makes sense. Okay, I know do that. Let's do like decimal. Oh, sorry. What do I want to name this? Let's do like number 2 and like number 3. That should be fine. And as you can see, because it broke, it didn't update. Right? So as you can see, we've now added a bunch of new variables. So one thing we can't do is we can't do like 1.1 in your first number. So if you remember, this was like, here, let me do this better. I'm like breaking all my rules. Dub, and let's do like float. Keep in mind that these are just variables and we can name them whatever we like. Alright, we control S that, we'll see that these numbers change. So when you're doing int, the integer data type, which is what this is a data type right here. And it is one of your most basic data types. If you haven't taken computer science yet, and anything at all, not even high school or college, the integer, double, right here, float, string, and character are going to be some of the most used things that you will ever touch. Okay? And what they do is they store values. Just same how rigid body stores rigid bodies, game object stores game objects, and canvas stores canvas. And it's not the same as storing something on your computer, it's the same as storing something in a file. It's something that the game can access later when it needs it, very specifically. So for instance, integer number, the special thing about integers is that it will not work with decimals at all. You can do negatives, but you cannot do decimals. You keep trying to press the dot, it will not go in there, and it never will. Okay? Double, you can do decimals, 1.1. Float, you can also do decimals, but float loves decimals. Float is like the holy grail of decimal usage. If there's like no reason to use integer or double, really. Just use float. Just use float, right? It doesn't matter. Word, which is what we use for string. I don't know why it's called string, and I don't know why it's called float or double. Your computer science professors can tell you, I forgot. I wasn't very good note taker, even though I have notes here. Right, so we have our double, our float. Don't let these confuse you. It's just syntax, okay? Character, char is short for character though. Yeah, so word, that is using a string. And string is anything we want to put in there, even in the slightest. So, if we were typing, maybe, have a nice day. And we can put that in there. Letter, however, wait, can we do the same? Wait, what? What? Well, typically, letter, wait, we can't do spaces though. What? Not know that. Well, anyway, typically, character is just stored, it's just supposed to store the one character. That's all it was supposed to do. If it does the whole thing, well then, more power to it. But typically, it just stores the one character, like one W or something. But string is used for whole words. So that's interesting. Yeah, so that's how you can make more of these public floats. Let's go back to movement.cs once more. I might have to go some water pretty soon. Alright, so now we have something a little bit different. It's the same as this, but we did something different. We have an equal 10f, and 10f just means 10 float. If we took this off, it works the same way, but 10f is specifically 10 float. Sorry, hold on. I don't think I changed this at all. Looks fine to me. Hold on, I'm just gonna... There we go. I just want to make sure I don't break my own code just by changing something to show you how it works. So yeah, equals 10f. When we can do the same for this, but we're not going to. Like, we could set this equal to something for a default, but we're not going to. For the sake of simplicity, we're only going to do that sort of thing with this. So when we do like equals 10, or equals anything, so if I did like equals, I think I have to do like this. we do it like that, if we do like float number make sure we have an equal sign, 1.1, and then we do equal 1.2, and then we do equal 5, and then we do equal s, gotta put back that, not string, control s. So if we do it like this, if we do things like this, what will happen is we will have created a default. You'll notice everything on the right is going to change when and if this loads. Come on, you can do it, Unity. I believe in you. I don't know why it's taking so long. I did not buy this computer for it to take this long to compile scripts. I guess Unity is just in a very terrible mood today. That's because I broke it. Oh yeah, sorry. F. I forgot, I have to do like this. So when you do strings, typically you do them in quotations and you do your characters in apostrophes. Forgot about that. And it works. Ta-da! We go to test, and we can see, well, hold on. Get rid of that, please. That's not my default, is it? No, it's S. Well, let me remove it and re-add it, and let's see if that works. Yoink. We go to projects, we go to test, throw that on there. Yep, and there's all of our defaults. We have our default 5 for the int, our 1.2 and our 1.1, have a nice day for real, and S. So when we put anything equals to something as a public variable, you'll notice that it's a default. It's already there for you. We can still change it if we want, but yeah. Like if I want to change this to like 1.3, and it'll stay. Like it's just a default. Yeah. So float is one of our integer data types. Integer, double, and float are all number data types. Int does not like decimals, double does, and float really likes decimals. So let's continue. So now we have something different once again. We have private float x. So just how public defines the access, private is the opposite. And I think there's a third one that I can't remember, but private just means that you can't see it in the inspector. Okay? If I did, let's do like private int 2. Alright, let's compile. Please don't take a long time, Unity. I beg of you. I don't know what your deal is today. It just doesn't like me. It just hates me. I didn't break it, did I? Please, Unity, please. It's just being overly difficult. Maybe I should have updated Visual Studio. And we're good. Except... oh, let's just spell it wrong. I forgot to declare a variable. Okay, so that worked. So as you can see, we did that and it's nowhere to be found. Well, yeah, I know that. But it's still a thing, and it still has a default. So it's really just a public. It's the same thing. You just can't see it in the inspector. That's all that it means. It's nothing important. But in this case, this is going to cover our x and y movements. That's what this is going to do. So when you declare a public variable and these are like declaring variables. This is where we're going to store things, right? So let's move on to our next bit. Void is a function. Void functions do not need to return a variable. Awake is called when the game is loading. So if you guys remember, you guys have void start, which is called before the first frame update. So you know those like really long load times in games like GTA and maybe even Skyrim and Fallout? That's all covered in void awake. And kind of in void start if you think about it. But typically void awake. So this is kind of like our load time. So our little bit of code in that is going to be rigi, which is the same as our variable. So whatever you named your public rigid body variable, you're going to call rigi. And we're telling it to get a component rigid body. So alternatively to doing this, we don't even need this if we use this line of code. What this is doing is this is requesting the rigid body component on whatever object we put the script on. So what I'm trying to say is, if we put this script on the sphere, which I'm going to rename to player really quickly, you, my friend, are taking a really long time to compile scripts, and I don't like it. Why are you like this? I'm just going to stop hitting Control S. I'll have a fix for this before next video. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. This warning down here is just telling me that in the script test, I made a variable called number, and I assigned it, but I never actually did anything with it. Yeah, cry about it, Unity. I don't care. And this tells me, the folder is in the assets folder under scripts, in the scripts test.cs on line 15, character space 17. Don't know what that means. I think that's the error code. What was I doing? I was renaming this. Player. And real quick, we're going to throw our movement script onto player. Okay, and we can see it's asking for the rigid body, and it has the default 10 speed that we had earlier, which is right here. You don't have to copy these notes, by the way. The notes do not help the code run. Everything else that is not green helps the code run, and it is actual code. I probably should have mentioned that earlier, and I apologize. But let's say we didn't have public rigid body. We can use this piece of code right here to do the same thing as this. So remember how this is asking for a rigid body? This is asking for a rigid body, and it is finding the rigid body. Okay? This says, oh, you want a rigid body? Got you. I'm going to assign it for you. You don't have to drag anything in. Psh, easy. So easy. And it'll do it for us. If I hit play, Unity is going to get incredibly angry, and it's going to tell me, missing component exception, there is no rigid body attached to the player, which is our sphere, or our ball. But the script is trying to access it. You probably need to add a rigid body to the game object player. Your script needs to check the component is attached before using it. Okay, so like I said, that is saying that we need to add a component, which is a rigid body. I already have that typed in. You can just look in the, click the add component button, use the search bar and do like rigi, and you can select the rigid body. There's also rigid body 2D, but that is for 2D objects, and of course we are working in 3D. So make sure you use the first one. Rigid bodies are used for anything that is falling, moving, shooting across the screen like a bullet. Any kind of physics-based movement at all needs a rigid body, okay? You can move things without it, but we kind of need the mass and the drag and the angular drag and the gravity and the constraints. If we want to freeze, keep it from moving a certain direction, we kind of need that in the rigid body. So if we hit play, Unity doesn't yell at us. Thank you, Unity. Alright, so we fixed that. We'll also notice, let me hit play one more time, how it says none right now, and then we hit play, it finds the component on its own. But if you really want to, you can just drag it in, just like that. You just hold left click and drag it in, just like that. And it makes no difference whatsoever. Pretty easy. Next up, we have void update. An update is called once per frame, and it is good for taking inputs and animations. Private means that it cannot be changed by another script or from an inspector variable. So I probably should put that up here, shouldn't I? Don't know why I decided to put it down here. So just like how public floats and rigid bodies and game components and doubles can be public and private, so too can be functions, which is what these are called. These are called functions. I will show you how to make one in 1 second. I'm going to skip this right here, and I'm going to skip this right here for now. You do need to copy it down. You do need it for your code, but I'm going to skip explaining until we start with this. So this is what you call a function. I already mentioned that. These are all functions as well. But this one is different. So fixed update and awake and start all have functions already attached to them. Just how awake is called when the game's loading, update's called once per frame. Fixed updates is good for physics-based movement, and it is good for physics-based movement because it's called a little more consecutively, like every 25 frames, I think. It's just a tad bit better. But processed inputs, that's something I did. We can name this whatever we want. House, ball, whatever. Okay? It's another variable. So let me show you how to make a function really quickly. All we have to do is use the void, called ball, I guess, and you just made a function. Congratulations. Now, when you make a function that's not like update or fixed update or awake, you have to call it. So we have to do ball just like that. And that will actually execute this function. You have to do this, okay? If you don't do this, this will never happen, okay? Does that make sense? Without calling it, like literally calling it, like picking up the phone and calling this function and telling it to come here and do its job, it will never execute, right? So that is what's happening right here. So every frame, this is happening. These guts are executing every single frame because it's being called right here. Right? So this little bit of code is saying it's using our variables up here at the top. We did like private float, and it is saying x equals input.getAxis horizontal. And this is asking Unity like, hey, where in the world is the ball on the horizontal axis? And it's asking for the z. Where is it on the vertical axis? And you need to make sure you spell vertical the same. These are not variables. These are important. Okay? Spell horizontal and spell vertical exactly the same way. Make sure your capitalization is correct. Remember that x and z are variables, and if you use something different, then you need to make sure they're the same. Right? So next up, we're going to move to our next function that we made. Once again, you can call this ball, house, SAU, whatever you'd like. And this one's a tad bit more complicated. I'm not going to explain this because I don't really know what's going on, but it's saying we're going to take the rigid body and we're going to add a force to it on the new vector 3. Using the x position at 0 float and the z position, and multiply that by the speed, which is right here, which is 10f. And this is our equation / syntax for moving. And if you've copied all this down, which I'll give you like 2 seconds to do as I take a sip from my Subway cup, that is almost empty. Yeah, once you have this copied down, we will we'll throw it on. If you haven't already, throw it onto the player, your sphere that you made. I'm also going to move our test cube out of the way because it's kind of in the way, isn't it? If you've done everything right, when you hit play, you should be able to use WASD to move. And congratulations, you've learned to roll a ball. That's all there is to it. You can also use arrow keys if you want. The reason why Unity knows how this works is that Unity is very smart and can already tell which ones people typically use, which is arrow keys and WASD. You can specify these, but we're not going to go into that. So if you wanted to use like spacebar for some reason, you can do that too. But yeah, you've learned how to roll a ball. But we're not done, guys. We still have 2 more scripts to go through. I won't have to explain as much. These scripts are very short, so please sit tight. We're almost done. A game is not really. If you've made your arena bigger, or if you like to make a maze, you kind of need to be able to see where your ball is going. So we're going to access the camera script. So same way you made a script earlier, the movement script, we're going to create a C# script, just like we did earlier. And we're going to double click on it to open it. Well, I'm just going to delete mine because I don't need it, but you do need to make one. Call it camera if you want, call it camera movement, or call it, I don't know, a curse word if you want. It really doesn't matter. But keep in mind, organization is important, okay? It's very, 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 very important. Once again, we have to wait for Unity to compile a script that, I deleted, but... Thanks, Unity. Can almost always count on you. Oh, it's done. I was looking at memes. Alright, camera. Let's open this up. And as you can see, it is very short. Same thing with the public objects. And don't get freaked out by this, okay? All I did was stack a few variables. So same way we've done our variables before, we can literally just go comma, well, that's not the best example. Let's do this one. I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, this is fun. Comma space 2.2 F, comma space 3.3 F, Control S. And if we do that, and we go back to Unity and wait for it to compile for no good reason. It doesn't want me to look at it while it's doing it, apparently. Apparently I can't do that. What? So what are you complaining about? Come on. Alright, fine, we can't do that. All this is doing is it is taking, oh, because I didn't name them. Oh, my bad. Sorry. You're supposed to do that with this, not with what it's equal to. My apologies. I'm just dumb. The same way we've been doing floats and whatnot, we can, it's just the same thing, guys. It's just a public float. Yeah, it's fine. It's just the same thing, right? It's just the same thing. All I did was stack it because it's easier. And why not, right? They're all the same variable, really. As you can see, we're missing our void start and void await because we don't need them. All we need is void update. It's a really short script. But it's a little long, and you need to pay attention to what is written here, okay? Because it's very specific, and it's got a lot of stuff going on. Transform.position equals target.transform position plus new vector 3, x offset, y offset, and z offset. This is telling the camera that we are going to give it a specific position to be in. Not necessarily how it moves, don't know why I wrote that, but still technically how it moves. Transform.lookAt, which is a function, by the way, it is not a variable. Target.transform.position tells the camera to look at the player, and the lookAt function is literal. So copy this down real quick. It's very short. I'm not going to explain it too terribly much. But transform does equal move. Position does mean position. So, and target, of course, was our variable up top. So if we go back to here and wait for Unity to stop yelling at us, we can go to camera. Make sure you have your rotation X set to 45 degrees. None of this other stuff matters. And let's go to projects, let's go to camera, throw that on there, and I highly suggest you set this to what I do down here, -4, and let's get the player, go back to here. What? There we go. So, just like how we were dragging the rigid body onto the player earlier, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're going to need to drag the, let's see, the, we're player onto the target. And yes, we did drag a game object that is not a part of the camera onto another script. We can in fact do that, and that's typically what you're going to use public variables for anyways, is finding different things in Unity that other things are using. Okay, so I do suggest you set your Y offset and your Z offset to what I did, because when you press play, it is going to look pretty nice. It's going to look pretty good. And as you can see, the camera is now following us down. If we go down here in the corner, or in the corner, over here to the right, so on and so forth. You get the idea. It's really just a third-person camera. Yeah, it's pretty good. You're more than welcome to change these Y offset and Z offsets, but you don't have to. One thing, by the way, that I forgot to mention is if I change this to 5, or 5 again, while in play mode, keep in mind we're in play mode, and then exit play mode, it will reset whatever I did. Make sure all the editing you're doing is in this actual edit mode, okay, in the scene mode. Because if you don't, and you do a lot of changing while it's in play mode, it's all going to get changed, and I mean all of it, okay, so don't do that. Next up, we're going to do our coin script, and we're actually going to take this test cube. We're going to throw it like right there. It doesn't really matter where it is, because who cares? And I'm also going to go to materials, and I'm going to give it this coin material that I made earlier. At this point, you should know how to make materials. I'm not going to go over it again. Make it yellow, because why not? Coins are typically yellow. And we're going to make another script called coin. Name it whatever you like. I'm going to open it. And once again, I'm leaving void start and void update. We don't use them, but I'm leaving them because I might change the script later. But this is using a function called onTriggerEnter. And as you can see, it is asking for, what are these called? I forgot what they're called. Arguments. It's asking for arguments. No other function that we've made asks for arguments. Okay. Yeah, and you know process inputs doesn't have an actual function attached to it like update does? Well, onTriggerEnter does. And what this function is kind of like an if statement. If a trigger on a collider is activated by touching of a certain object, then these guts execute. So what this is saying is that when we hit something, a collider that is set to a trigger, it doesn't matter what collider it is, it's going to access the movement script, and it's going to take the script once more, game object from the script. It's going to say if component does not equal null, which means if the component exists, so long as the component from above is found, then execute this following statement, which is debug.log 1 point. Now, what debug.log does is it sort of acts like a programmer's best friend, or a development person, a programmer's best friend, really. Kind of like how when you break a game, you get an error message and the devs know what to fix. It's probably because of the debug.log, or some kind of debug function that they're using, because not every developer uses Unity. If you cannot figure why something's not working, or why something's not executing, it is smart to use debug.log to see where things aren't running. So for example, under ball, we can do debug.log, and we can say a ball. Why not? Let's just say ball. You can put whatever you like in there. And then if we go back to Unity, and we're gonna wait 3 ages for it to compile for some reason. I think Visual Studio hates me. And it's done. Okay, and we're gonna hit play. And if you look at console, we will see that every frame, it just says ball. Yeah, that's not annoying. You can name that whatever you like. And once again, we used a function for this, and we called the function and void update. This is very important to do when you're running with functions. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to this. There's actually nothing to this really at all. I don't think I missed anything. I feel like I did. But let's assume I didn't and throw this coin script onto... what are we doing here? What? No, stop, please. No, Unity, come back. Throw that onto our coin. And as you can see, we got the coin script, and there's one more thing we need to do. And we need to set the box collider on our coin, or test, I guess, in this case. I'm going to rename it coin. Alright. On our coin, we need to rename it to, or we need to check mark this little box right here, is trigger. We need that to be true. And the reason for this is because, if you remember in the script, the coin script, it says that on trigger enter, we must have that. Right? So when we hit play, and we, okay, cool. And we roll into it. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, hold on. Let's just kind of edit that out. You can also comment things out as well, like that. And then you just take out the comments and it works fine. Very cool. Please, Unity. Okay, thank you. Very kind. Alright, we roll into it, and we can see we get 1 point for every time we touch it. Pretty easy. And the reason, and as you can tell, we go right through it. So if any time we add a trigger to something, like let's say if we went to the sphere collider on our player, and we checked it, we would fall right through the map. And we can see our Y value increasing. So make sure you throw the coin script on the coin and you turn the trigger on for this to work. And now, finally, congratulations, because you have just learned to roll a ball and score points. If you'd like, you can make a maze and you can destroy the game object coin after it has been collected. And yeah, actually you've made a game at that point. You can make a maze the same way we made our arena, and you can kind of, you know, have your friends play and have a good time. I'm not going to talk about building or anything like that, building the game like in the build settings. I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to talk about cloud saves or really anything else besides the asset store. So if you guys remember looking at my, not prefabs, scenes, we go to Rollerball 1. Yes, make sure you save. I have a soccer ball, and I have some semi-realistic grass from God knows where. And we have a beautiful skybox. Just a beautiful skybox. Right? We've got all that. So how did I get it? Well, you can go to Window, and you can go to Asset Store. That is going to open up your browser, and assuming you've logged into Unity, which I hope you have, you can look at everything Unity has to offer, including free stuff. So you do free character, and we can choose, is it 3D? Let's drop the price all the way down because we are cheapskates. Make sure we check 3D, and we can see all, oh wait, what? Oh, I love this author. Wait, is this the same author? Wait a second. I'm getting distracted. Hold on. Wait, is it? I can't tell. I don't think it is. I think this is another author. As you can see, a lot of these cost money, but you know, that's okay. We'll be right. If you want to buy these, you can, but of course you can just get the free ones, and you can get whatever you want, whatever your internet can download. Literally whatever you want. If you need ground assets, you can get ground assets. If you need characters, you can get characters. Enemies, you name it, they got it. Viking pack. What? Oh, this is kind of nice. Okay, cool. And yeah, where's my card? I have no idea what this is, but it is free. Yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of our tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to roll a ball. I will have more tutorials coming out as I progress in my class. I've done Unity before. I've done Unity for a very long time, and I have what else? I've done stuff on my own as well. But even still, I am still a beginner. If you saw something in this that I may have said wrong or anything that I didn't explain properly, please let me know in the comments. And make sure you help others who are having issues with this or have questions. Don't be afraid to look up other YouTube videos on how to do things in Unity. Don't be afraid to use Unity. It's not scary, guys. You can see how easy it is to roll a ball. So, without further ado, I bid you all a good day and happy ball rolling.